I had a serious aircraft incident in June 1988. We were flying, I was commanding the squadron. We were flying from the aircraft carrier Virat in a Sea Harrier. Take off from the carrier, go over the land because it was supposed to be army support mission. Army has certain targets which they want the aircraft to attack. So this is what we were practicing. Off the east coast, south of Chennai, near Kalpakkam. And I was flying in a trainer with a pupil who was sitting behind, and I was showing him how it is carried out. We went to the initial position we call IP, and from IP to target I started going at 200 feet above the ground level, flying at a speed of about 600 miles per hour. As I pulled up, suddenly there was a lot of noise coming from the engine. I knew that there is something wrong with the engine. The controller outside, he saw a big flame behind the aircraft. He said, "Sir, your aircraft is on fire." I said, "Roger." Now the drill here is, I was looking at the engine was winding down, RPM was winding down, so you shut off the engine. I shut off the engine by putting the fuel cock off. Controller said, "Sir, the fire is gone." My pupil behind, he was only hearing the engine noise. He couldn't make out what I was trying to say. I tried to restart the engine. In the meantime, my pupil, he panicked. He was not able to hear anything, so he ejected out of the aircraft. I could feel him going out. As I attempted to restart the engine was damaged, and therefore the engine would not restart, but the fuel was going in. Again the fire started. Controller said, "Sir, the aircraft is again on fire." I said, "Roger." I realized that the engine cannot be started. In the meantime, the speed was also coming down, and now it was come to the critical speed of about 300 miles per hour, below which the aircraft would not sustain flight. I knew the aircraft was going to go down. I had to eject. So I gave a call, "Mayday, Mayday, Mayday." Use my call sign. Supposed to use 3 times, I only used once. I realized, no, I don't have the time. So I pulled the ejection seat handle and got thrown out of the aircraft. Later on, the Board of Inquiry told me that from the point that I ejected until the aircraft impacted the ground, the gap was only 9 seconds. So it was as close as that. This ejection seat is the one which saved me in 1988 when I had to jump out of the aircraft, and it gave me a second life. Many a times I am asked a question that when you reach high up in an organization like Armed Forces, where it is a pyramidal structure, where only few can reach on top, what is it that is required to reach there? Is it that you have to do some very stellar performance, go by the book and produce results? No. That's a misconception.
So how did you get the Now Sena Medal gallantry?
That incident happened later in 1991. So I was assigned a task to train the newly joined pilots. So I was flying one aircraft and the other fighter was being flown by another junior officer, and I had taken him for aerial combat exercise. 2 aircraft fight with each other. I took off in the lead aircraft, he took off in the second aircraft. As soon as I took off, the way the sound or whatever you may say, as soon as my undercarriage went up, to me it appeared as if that the aircraft told me that there is something wrong. But apparently there was no indication in the cockpit, everything was fine. So I asked my number 2, is everything looking all right from outside? He said everything is fine, there was no problem. So we continued with our mission. We practiced the combat outside, which just lasted for about 40 minutes, and then we came back for a landing. Now when we came for a landing, in turn, I was to land first and he was to land second. So as I came to the point where I had to lower the undercarriage down for a landing, I did that, but the undercarriage did not come down. Nothing would happen. So I realized that there is something wrong with the system. So that is the time I declared that this is an emergency. I have no wheels coming down. There is an emergency system that in case the undercarriage does not come down normally, then you actually fire a kind of a cylinder and the air pressure forces the undercarriage down. But once you've done that, then you are supposed to land within certain time. So that action is always kept till the end. So now when everything was okay and I was given a clearance to land, and when I operated the system, nothing happened. Which means that that system also failed and my undercarriage did not come down. Now what? Now as far as the book is concerned, the book is very clear that in a Sea Harrier aircraft, if the undercarriage fails to come down, then you can do a vertical landing provided there is a facility called the grid facility, which is available ashore. Basically because when the aircraft is coming for a vertical landing, there are gases which are going down, and these gases must get absorbed through the grid. So if they reflect, then they will hit the aircraft and the aircraft will go out of control. And all our fuel tanks and etc. are on the belly, they will quite catch fire. So this system was not available at Goa. So therefore by book, I should have ejected.
You had an ejection incident just a few years back, so that must have been there in the back of your mind.
At that time, my flying experience was such, and I was current, that I always used to feel that the aircraft actually talks to me. And in this case, it was something like aircraft telling me that you can do a vertical landing here without any problem. It can be done. Maybe it was a self-confidence. So I took a decision that I said I am not going to eject, but I am going to land the aircraft on the runway vertically down. Now this is something which you are now not doing by the book. And if, as was advised, if something was to go wrong, then it was a personal risk to me. The aircraft in any case would have been destroyed. Even if I had ejected, the aircraft would have been destroyed, but I would have been safe. But I took a decision, no, I am going to land, I am confident, nothing will happen to me. And of course the aircraft also will be saved. So accordingly, I attempted a vertical landing. The landing was so perfect that actually when we touched down, I didn't realize, as if I put the aircraft gently on the ground. I shut the power off, evacuated the aircraft immediately because there was still hot gases going down, there was a risk of fire. And I jumped out of the aircraft, fire tenders and all in the meantime had come. I ran away and I told the fire tender, don't close, let the engine die down. And these strakes which you see on both the sides, they were the ones who actually took the shock of the aircraft, and like it crumpled, but the aircraft remained safe. And that aircraft afterwards started flying again. So it was not only that my life was saved, the aircraft was saved, and it came back to flying. That means it was also saving for the government or the exchequer. That is why I was given the Nausena Medal Gallantry. Actually, in an organization, a person is looked at from the point of view, is he useful to the organization to start with? That means whatever is task assigned to him, is he in a position to discharge his functions effectively and as would be required by the organization. Books or the rule book is there, which is as a guidance. But ultimately, the personal performance, particularly in the armed forces, is also based on a situation. So, if the situation demands a particular action from a person, he should be quick enough to take the decisions or to perform as is required, the rule book as a guidance. And unless there is some kind of an initiative, unless there is some kind of an imaginative thinking, you cannot do it. So going by the book is not the essence. Proving yourself useful to the organization for the functions that you are required to do, that is what is required.
Not common knowledge, but I come from a family of hunters. So all my holidays I spent in this village called Ambuli, with a house right in the middle of a forest. No other house, in a radius of a kilometer or so. First 8 years without electricity. So that was my initiation into the wildlife, and basically up close, right in the middle of the forest. So there was a time when we used to go out hunting regularly. But at one point in time, I think for some reason, God alone knows, I was kind of more inclined towards observing, and doing stuff. I mean, I'm not really interested in hunting and shooting. And my father, I think, probably realized that, and so started getting me books, not hunting himself. And at one point of time, we stopped going hunting. And I think one of the reasons why my uncles also stopped coming, who used to be regular visitors then. Then got into good company, right kind of friends, and slowly, the transition happened from being a hunter to what I'm doing at the moment. So we are at the foothills of the Western Ghats. The forest type that we are walking through is the moist deciduous forest type. Goa is unique in that sense, because the Western Ghats section is at the confluence of the northern and the southern Sahyadris, which makes it unique because we see representative species from both these biotypes within our geographical zone. And we are also closest to the sea. All these influences the way the faunal assemblage is here.
So this is the burrow of the tarantula spider. So they burrow into these earth banks. They line it up with the web. And it's a nocturnal species, so in the night it will come out and wait at the entrance. Anything passes by, they feel the vibrations and then they'll grab it.
This, I'm not very sure about why it makes these beautiful designs. So, there's a school of thought which says that it ends up attracting prey. And because of those beautiful markings, it's called the signature spider. So I wear a lot of hats, do a lot of stuff, but the area that I would like to really focus on and make an impact is responsible and sustainable travel. One of the reasons being that we want to create a different narrative of what Goa is and how Goa is being portrayed. And we believe that when it comes to ecotourism, the local communities have to be an important stakeholder, and we are working towards very strongly towards that. So this is the Brux's forest lizard, earlier also referred to as the forest coyotes. Kidista?
Come and have a look.
With Omkar, who is arguably Goa's best naturalist, on board, along with Shraddha and Shivdas, we formalized Mruga expeditions, which we all are part of.
Omkar, what did you study in college?
Computer engineering.
So there was a time when I dreamt of being a forest officer, and I started preparing for it as well. But during and after my graduation, I started volunteering for organizations, working with the forest department. And then I saw some of the forest officers were not really getting to do what they wanted to do, being part of the system. So I think that's the time I kind of realized that I could probably have a better impact working out of the system. And I think to a large extent I've been proven right. But that doesn't mean I don't value the system. Wherever possible, I try and work with it. So that was the kind of dilemma that I had. And I guess for someone like Omkar, there was never really a dilemma.
So when I was doing my computer engineering course, I used to go out during weekends very often into the forest, where I realized that that is something which I wanted to do more than the engineering course that I was doing. And I realized that I would not be able to do something by sitting in an office all day, and decided that before I completed my engineering, I was very clear on what I would want to do, and I've pursued that, and that is what I'm doing right now. I'm going to give a color.
How last time? Small flood.
Goa has about 476 species of birds.
And how many have you seen on your own?
409. So it basically involved spending a lot of time in the field, then interacting with people who are already present and working here as well. Also being part of the birding community, you get to interact with people outside the state of Goa as well, which also increased quite a bit of my knowledge. Then referring to the field guides that are available, and trying to identify the calls that you hear in the forest by yourself, that gives you a good grasp on the bird calls as well. And that is what I've been practicing myself, which has helped quite a bit in being where I am. Common Ayora, crimson-backed sunbird, yellow-browed bulbul, white-bellied blue flycatcher, flame-throated bulbul as well, common woodstrike, crimson-backed sunbird and purple-drummed sunbird. There's a pigeon called a grey-fronted green pigeon, which sounds very much unlike a pigeon that you regularly hear, and it goes like this, it's something like that.
So I struggled my way through school, basically. I actually believed I'd never get out. It felt like this endless, maybe prison's too strong a word, but it felt like this cube that I'm sort of trapped in, and with no end in sight. In fact, in like the 9th grade, how many subjects did we have? 7 or 8 or something like that? I think I flunked like 5 or 6 of them. And of course I had to do the whole retest thing and everything, and then I think that broke part of my spirit, and I believed that I'm never going to nail this, and I never did nail it. But I obviously drudged on, dragged myself through the 9th, 10th boards. The horror of all of that wasn't as bad as I thought it would be, and then 11th, 12th happened. I did decent in the 12th boards, and so I got admission in TU, and basically spent the next 3 years just discovering what I really enjoyed and loved doing. So there was a lot of music and art that happened during those years, and I think that kind of helped shape in the direction that I was going. So I grew up watching my father quite closely, but just sort of from the boundaries. He's a filmmaker. He's a wildlife filmmaker, and he might have even been one of the first few in India to have filmed tigers. And for me, he was always like dad who didn't mind wearing, torn pajamas. But I saw people around him react to him quite differently, and I always wondered while growing up, like, what did he do to, get this kind of attention, maybe, or hold sort of court with people as he spoke about, the forest or conservation and things. And as I grew, I sort of understood, and I understood the kind of work he was doing. And I always was drawn to it, but I never fully committed to it. And the turning point for me was when he made one of his most impactful films, and that was on whale sharks. And that was a trigger for me, I think, to watch that impact happen. Because when he had that idea of the whale shark, at that point no one believed that there were whale sharks on the Indian coastline. And that is something that he saw as a 12-year-old boy coming from Africa to India. And he held it in his memory, and he went back to Gujarat to find the whale sharks. And it took him 2 years to find it, but instead of seeing them in the ocean, they were being slaughtered on our coastlines. So that became a very important story for him to tell and share, and to try and create impact and bring protection to a species that wasn't even recognized as visiting Indian waters. It was a huge journey for him. I think it still remains one of his most important films and works. And to watch no one believe him, to a complete turnaround of a law being passed triggered by the film. Whale sharks as a species getting Schedule 1 status of protection, which is the same as the tiger, which is the highest for any wildlife protection act. So I think that lesson stayed with me quite long, and I think somewhere now, if I look back, I think that's where that process began of looking beyond yourself and trying to create something which has a lasting impact or effect or resonates.
One of my favorites was the film on Sultan. What was that experience like?
Sultan was definitely very special, still is very special, because it was a real coming full circle kind of experience for me. One was my father started his wildlife career with tigers, and a tiger shoot was one of the first two that I went with him on. And then to finally do a film on tigers with him kind of completed the circle. And within the tiger film, there's also a father-son thing happening. So it was like too many circles being completed. So it definitely has great memories for me to hold on to.
what do you hope to do for yourself in the future?
I think I've arrived at this point quite organically. Maybe I could have come to it quicker, but the excitement of making films, especially wildlife, and this initial draw of the glamour of it all, I think that's faded over time, and I've arrived at this place where I want it to be soul-filling work, which is moving beyond yourself and creating that impact. And I'll give you an example. We worked on a snow leopard film, Gyamo, which has been screening quite a fair bit. It's reaching those audiences we wanted it to reach, but it didn't start as the kind of film it ended up being. It was supposed to be a snow leopard film. It's called a blue chip film, where you just see pretty images and you feel this great respect and admiration for the beauty of nature. So we began this film, and we spent about a year and a half trying to get footage of snow leopards, and we did succeed. But as you spend time in a place, you start noticing these cracks, and one of the big cracks we actually were taken by a filmmaker friend of ours to see. He's from Ladakh, and he took us to this landfill, and it was quite naive of us to not think that there would be a landfill in Leh, because there are landfills in every city, and that's just the human condition. We create garbage, and once you see that, you can't unsee it. And to tell the story of snow leopards and Ladakh without the landfill would have just felt like we are not presenting the complete truth. And I think that is a lesson I keep relearning when I go to places and I'm trying to film, to tell the story in a 360 kind of a perspective, where it's not possible to cover all aspects of a story, but to at least present the truth in its entirety.
I'm searching what to be. I'm taking what you give me.
So where do you see wildlife filmmaking heading in the future?
Well, Riverbank Studios was started by my father, and he's always been about the bigger picture. And that's also something that I realize now, what he meant by the bigger picture is the kind of work we do at Riverbank Studios, which is one of the oldest wildlife production houses in India for sure. And it's over the years has become almost like a bit of an institute with a few thousand interns or trainees that have gone through its almost 50 years of existence. So the bigger picture is to kind of create a space for people who want to tell similar stories, or who gravitate towards the same kind of narrative and issues that we feel strongly about, and to give them sort of a springboard and launch themselves, their careers, or just kind of feel that that someone's got their back as well.
I set up Paradise School for my daughter. We used to live in the UK, where I was a broadcaster for the BBC, for Channel 4, for the Discovery Channel, and then we moved to North Goa, where I put my daughter in a very conventional, straight school. But it soon became apparent that something was not right. She became less than she was becoming diminished. I felt that her spirit was being broken, and I was faced with a very difficult decision. What do I do about this? I came across this American military term, VUCA, which stands for volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous, to describe a very unpredictable future. And it occurred to me that we didn't have any proper VUCA strategies for education, and that's really what Paradise is all about. That's when I came across the work of Dr. Sugata Mitra, who does SOUL, self-organized learning environments, which is where children work collaboratively using the internet to answer very big abstract questions, which allows them to unlock a lot of their intellectual potential way beyond their educational years. This, to me, seemed like a brilliant VUCA strategy for education. So I asked him to come on board as an advisor, and he said yes. But I had to marry it with a mainstream curriculum because I didn't want to lose structure altogether, and I wanted to stay within the mainstream. So we are now officially the world's first SOUL Cambridge school.
When you walk into a SOUL room, what you're most likely to find is children huddled around computers in groups using the internet to answer a really big question.
So what kind of questions do children look to answer?
We work with children from grade 1 onwards, so we have grade 1 students also doing SOUL. So the questions vary depending on the age group of children that you have. So some of the questions that we've asked are, do animals have feelings? Why do we dream? What would the future look like? And finally, and most interestingly, what would you do with $1 million? These questions don't have a right answer. They're open-ended. And the bigger the question you find, the more excited the children are to answer them. My observation with SOUL is that children can intuitively learn by themselves. So they are debating, they're analyzing, they're researching, and then they're finally presenting. I see that my role as a teacher is changing. It is becoming that of a facilitator, where I create a positive learning environment for these children. I can see the future unfolding before my eyes.
We have a very unique approach to education. So we've picked the most contemporary subjects from the Cambridge curriculum, which are very exciting, like enterprise, environmental management, global perspectives, and digital literacy. We also believe in personalized learning rather than standardized teaching. So every kid's educational needs are very much met individually. We also allow the older children to schedule their own exams over 3 exam series in the year. So you don't have to cram them all in June in one go, which makes it a lot less stressful for our children. And then we also allow children a lot of self-governance within the school. So they are free to come to us as adults, as educators, with their good ideas, which we will take on board if we like them. So for example, one of our favorite days in school is Enterprise Day.
What are you up to?
I'm going through my survey results for Enterprise Day. Enterprise Day is a day where children at Paradise School get to set up mini stalls and businesses. And parents are invited to buy our products as we display them. It's actually one of the most anticipating days of the year. Enterprise Day is an opportunity for children to practice their organization skills, financial planning, and market research. And it gives them a broad perspective of how a business works in real life. So for my enterprise project, I'll be selling my artwork printed on different products, like water bottles, canvas bags, notebooks, keychains, pencil pouches, and etc. My project name is Crackpot Collections, and I'll be doing my own artwork. And it seems to me that, according to my survey, majority want space, sci-fi, and wildlife kind of artwork printed on their products. So coming to Paradise was a big change for me, as I have dysgraphia, which is a condition that makes me struggle writing. And this was a big problem in my other schools, as I was stressed out and I couldn't excel. But coming to Paradise, I learned not to get weighed down by my weaknesses, but to focus and excel in my strengths. So in a lot of my previous schools, the teacher would write things on a blackboard and we were forced to write them down in our books. They were literally forcing the information down the child's throat when they were going to forget the very next day. Whereas here at Paradise, it's like a tree. You have to reach out and get the fruit yourself. No one's going to be there throwing down stuff at you. So it's mostly self-organized and self-taught, which is a great learning experience, because in real life, you're gonna have to get the fruit yourself. No one's gonna be standing on the tree throwing things down at you.
Your mum narrated this little incident where you were desperate to get out of your old school, and your parents then dared you to go into the woods and bring back that scarf that was hanging off the tree. It was dark and scary, but you actually did it. So your parents actually listened to you.
Yes, and I'm glad they did. And that should be for every child.
So your mum actually started a school for you. So how did it work out?
I think it worked out great. I mean, I love it in Paradise. I feel academically supported, emotionally supported, and I'm in an environment that was personalised to me, that I'm able to be myself in and kind of flourish. Especially compared to other schools that I've been to, I'm quite intellectually curious, and I always ask how or why or I don't get it. And a lot of teachers, they can be intimidated by that, and they can be like, no, don't ask why, it is what it is, this is what you get, this is what you do. And at least in here, I'm like, okay, I don't get it, I don't understand. They're like, great, okay, cool, now let's take it one step further, let's take a step back, let's, watch this video, let's talk about this. And then I'm just able to leave the classroom knowing that I know my stuff and I'm confident in what I've learned. Yeah.
Composites essentially is an advanced material of construction. This is stronger than steel, lighter than steel, and it is made out of two components. One component is a fiber and the other component is a plastic. When these two materials are combined, you get composites. Because of these properties, it finds application in a number of sectors, such as railway interiors, industrial applications, defense, and aerospace. Many performance automotives also end up using composites as a major material of construction. As you can see in this car, this is a Formula racing car, body which is essentially and completely made out of composites. So composites, light and strong material, used in many applications and is the material of the future. So you are now in Kyneco's rail division manufacturing plant, where we manufacture interiors for trains. We are country's largest interior manufacturer for train systems. As you can see, we manufacture the complete interior panels, the toilet systems, modular toilets, which is a new concept for modern trains which are coming up in India. And this division now will introduce a lot more new products in the coming years for train systems in Indian Railways drive towards modernization. I'm standing in Kyneco's defense product manufacturing facility, and what you see in front of you here is manufacturing of sonar domes. Sonar dome is a dome that protects the sonar of a warship or a submarine. Basically, Kineco was awarded a contract 4 years back for manufacture, rather development of sonar domes. First time in the country, these sonar domes were imported. So we successfully concluded development sea trials and qualified ourselves as the sole supplier of the sonar domes in India, nominated by the Navy. We were recently awarded by the Defence Minister on honor for our contribution to Make in India. So this is where it all began 2.5 decades ago, 1995, 25th of May 1995 to be precise, where we started our first composite manufacturing facility. This was an industrial composite manufacturing facility where we made tanks and vessels for chemical plants. 6 people, 250 square meters of building, 6 lakhs of investments. That's where it all began. We've come a long way since then.
So you always had a good job and then you decided to become an entrepreneur. So was there no concerns? What was your approach?
I not only had a good job, actually I had a fantastic job. I had a fantastic job right here in Goa. So everything was at my feet, but there was a bug in me of entrepreneurship, and that would never allow me to be comfortable in a job. So when I decided, or rather it was already decided that I would do something, and for me job was a stepping stone. The job was for creating that experience which would help me in actually converting my idea of entrepreneurship into an enterprise. And that is why it was never a concern, particularly for me, even though I had a very good job, to quit that job and get into something that was uncertain. Uncertain for others, for me it was very certain that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I had that conviction that I will be successful. I think that is the biggest strength of any entrepreneur, that the conviction in himself that he will make it work is what drives entrepreneurship.
So could you say that you actually went without a plan B?
I would say when an enterprise is born, it's born out of an idea and a passion to do something. When you convert an entrepreneurship idea into an actual enterprise, there is an element of reality in it. So you start making something or offering some service. Whatever you do, you know that you want to do it well, right? So there is never a plan B in that sense. I would rather say there was no plan B is a phrase that I learned much later. Because I never ever thought that there was anything other than for me a journey ahead. Whether I fell, I got up again, went into my next leg of journey. So for me, looking left or looking right was never an option. But it was not a conscious kind of a decision if I fell. It was always very natural that my vision was going forward and I will keep going forward.
What would be your advice to young people?
My advice to young people, especially young aspiring entrepreneurs, first of all, entrepreneurship is not an option of another occupation. Entrepreneurship is something that you want to do for your accomplishment. It is not an alternate income option. I think that's the first advice. So when you get into entrepreneurship, there's a bug inside you which tells you want to go ahead in your life and achieve something on your own. So that's the difference between a job and an entrepreneurship. So when you look for a job, you look for job satisfaction. You also look for income. But in entrepreneurship, I think the job satisfaction or the satisfaction of being able to accomplish something which you visualize has to be a much more bigger driving force than money. Eventually, money will happen. But if you make money as an instrument of entrepreneurship, I think you will soon realize that the vision which you started with will end up very, very quickly because you're not making money. Because very few enterprises make money in the early years, and it's important for every young person to understand that entrepreneurship is a very long journey. Success will take time. So you have to nourish your accomplishments each time and be ready for the next leg. Money will follow.
I got into endurance cycling in grade 12th. I did my first 100 kilometers
with a small group of cyclists. I then kept pushing myself to do 200 kilometers, 300 kilometers, and then 400 kilometers.
I might be denied.
So cycling brings a lot of joy to me. You see so many new people and you get to see new places. So that happens only in the first 24 hours. So after 24 hours, your body just goes numb and you just, go this on the bike cycling.
Too afraid that if I tried that I may choke. I'm too wrapped up in thought to take the chance I've got.
From a very young age, I always wanted to do something with books. So in 9th standard, I had a dream of starting a reading lounge for people, but that always remained a dream. So in 12th standard, when endurance cycling happened, I said, why not merge endurance cycling with delivery of books? So that's when I went to Emmanuel, Souza, and we formed the Boutique Goa.
The Boutique Goa essentially is an online library that delivers books to your doorstep and picks it up as well. So the way this works is our customers log into our online website or the app. They choose from the range of books that we have, place an order, and at the soonest we'll deliver it to them, and once they're done, we pick it up as well. So we do all of this at a fee of only 30 rupees per week. So between Elijah and me, we cycle around 300 kilometers per month. And the reason our members like us so much is because instead of buying a book online or from a bookstore, they can just rent it from us at a very small price. Also, it saves them a lot of time, it saves them a lot of space, because once you're done with the book, it no longer has to gather dust on your shelf. And we're also very environmental conscious. We reduce our carbon footprint, we reuse old newspaper for our packaging. And I think it's all these things that our members like about us.
So it's been a great experience converting a concept into a business.
Yeah, and being in college, also we felt like it was the right time because we didn't have major responsibilities, we have a lot of freedom. And this whole business has given us so much exposure. It has introduced us to so many new things, so many new people. It has taught us so much more than we could have imagined.
So when it comes to scaling this business, I feel there's a lot of potential when it comes to books, to have a business around books. And in the near future, we feel that we will have a cafe and we'll incorporate Emmanuel's love for jazz into it as well.
So what do your friends say about your little business?
Well, most of them are really encouraging and they love the concept, but we do get a lot of questions, regarding the money. Is it worth it for the amount of effort you put in? But honestly, right now it's not just about the money. Money will come. Right now it's about putting your mind to something and accomplishing it, just reaching that goal. That gives you the satisfaction more than the money right now.
And what would you like to do in your immediate future?
Right now I'm in my final year of mechanical engineering. About the future, I haven't figured it out exactly, but I would definitely love to take all the experiences that I've learned through this business and definitely explore the entrepreneurship route. So yeah, how about?
For me, I'm studying my bachelor's in agriculture, and in the near future, I would like to start organic farming and also teach farmers about the new techniques and get them back into farming because it's still a profitable business. I also want to teach the youth about farming as well.
So you're not really looking at a government job in
agriculture? No, surely not a government job. I have a goal in mind and I'm going to do it.
You're the book I never read. Passed you on the shelf, grabbed another one instead. Fear you'd blow my mind. A good book is hard to find. What am I to do? If we got together, what dreams would come true? What am I to do when the day is through?
Everyone reaches a crossroad in their life where they had to make some decisions, and they told you about the choices that they made.
The naturalist wanted to contribute positively to the environment, but wondered whether he would be able to create the necessary impact by joining the system or work outside it. He chose to support the system by working outside it to achieve the desired impact on sustainability. The filmmaker was not fully committed to follow his illustrious father's footsteps, but then a film on Wales impacted the world and him. His films are now more than just pretty pictures, presenting a mirror of truth and influencing policies. The educationists with a background in journalism felt the system was breaking the spirit of children, including our own daughter, and decided to start a school with educational strategies for the future. The entrepreneur had a great corporate job but decided to set out on his own. His approach was to not have a plan B and focus on what it takes to make it work. He has never looked back ever since. Two college students decided that the best way to learn the basics of business was to actually start one. And they have realized at a very early age that the goal should not be to chase money, but to try and accomplish something. And so, when you reach such a crossroad, when you're faced with such a dilemma, do you know what you should do? You should keep working hard until you reach a point where your aircraft starts speaking to you. When your aircraft starts speaking to you, you will have no fear. And then do you know what you need to do next? Just go for it.
Now that you asked me, I narrated to you an ejection incident, which is a serious matter. However, after I ejected and I found myself that I was safe, now my concern was that what has happened to my pupil pilot, student pilot, who had ejected earlier. So I looked around. There were two boys who were looking at this whole thing. They must be shepherd boys kind of. So I called them. They got so scared they ran away. So I didn't know what to do. But in the meantime, one gentleman came on a Luna moped and he stopped, and when I called him, he did come. And he could speak to me broken English. So I said, this is what has happened. But I want to, there is another pilot who ejected. He said, yes, I saw him and he's somewhere there. I can take you there. I said, fantastic. I said, what happens to my equipment? He said, don't worry, I'm an off-duty constable. So he summoned those two boys who had run away and he said, you guard this equipment and nothing should happen and I'll take you. He put me on his moped. Now he's driving, I am behind, and we started going towards the other pilot where he landed. This was so excited he was that when he was driving, there was a herd of these cattle there, and he went and directly rammed into one of the cow. So I got scared. I said, from the ejection, I have landed up safe, but I think I probably will already now meet a road accident and may break my limbs. So I told him, take it easy. We got up. Luckily, nothing had happened. So that was the funniest part of that entire serious incident.
Okay, so during my early birding days, I think sometime in the 90s, I happened to see a bird called the desert whittier in Goa. And during that time, it was not known to, be wintering so far down south. So I wasn't really sure about myself. And one day I was birding with a Britisher, his name was Roy Crosby. So I happened to mention it to him, and he said, so why are you doubting yourself? So I said, no, I'm not too sure about it. He said, if you've seen it, it must be that. So I said, no, but the books don't mention it. So I think in his typical British accent, he said that birds don't read books.
Back in the day, it used to be Bollywood films that used to be competition for us to compete, and get that audience. These days, it's TikTok. I need to install that app and just crack it, basically.
At the heart of Paradise School, there is a wild garden where the natural ecosystem of children is allowed to flourish. This is where children are allowed to explore and discover who they are. It has trees and wild bees and beautiful flowers and who knows what. Basically, this is their space. This is where children are allowed to be children and for them to uncover their own thinking processes. This walled garden is what I protect. I am the goddess at the gate.
Actually, my first new car came after 2000, almost after 10 years of my journey, and until then I had second-hand cars. And the first new or rather luxury car came just about 4 years back. That too, I must tell you, my colleagues started telling me, "Saab, gaadi change kar do, bahut purana ho gaya."
So Elijah's personal best is 600 kilometers in 39 hours, but he is looking to top that pretty soon.
So I'm going to attempt the 1200 kilometer ride in France that you're supposed to be completing in 90 hours. So I'm training for that every day and looking to complete it successfully.